And Chair, who would you like your point person to be for watching the, for raised hands? Do you want that to be Tom Webster or Rick Walk?
How about Rick? He's got my.
I just want to make sure you don't get a whole lot of cooks in the kitchen. All right, starting webinar. Here we go.
All right. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the November 9th, 2022 meeting of the Thurston Regional Housing Council. Why don't we do quick check-ins and introductions? And why don't we start this week with Olympia?
Hi, everybody. Danny Madrone with the Olympia City Council. I'll be representing the city today, and I see Rich Hoy here, and I think it's just you and me, Rich.
All righty. How about Thurston County?
Thank you. Carolina Mejia, Thurston County Commissioner, and I have Tom Webster, Keely Marino, I have Ramiro Chavez, and I'll just, I was like, do I see anyone else? Megan Porter is also joining us in the attendees list. So that is all for Thurston County. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
Did you hear me all right? Hello?
You were dragging a lot on your audio. So it sounds like a weak connection. Okay, let's move on to Tumwater.
Hi, Michael Althauser, Tumwater City Council. I'm joined by Councilmember
I
Joan
apologize. I'm in.
joined by Councilmember Joan Cathy, as well as Brad Medrud from our planning department. Happy to be here.
All righty. Thank you, Michael. Carolina, was it or something else you were trying to say there?
No, can you hear me better?
No.
Guess not.
You want to hang up and try to reconnect and see if you can get a better signal? All right. Well, while we're waiting for that to resolve, I'm Carolyn Cox representing City of Lacey, and we have our city manager, Scott Spence, here, and our soon-to-be acting city manager, Rick Walk, who is currently Director of Community and Economic Development. So, welcome, everybody. Did I miss anybody? Do we have Brian from Yelm? Is he here? Okay. All righty. Kelly, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to check in with you before the meeting. I was flying low here to get here. Is there anybody signed up for public comment?
I do not have anyone signed up for public comment, but I do have your guests on the agenda available in the attendees.
All righty. Any of the guests wish to make a comment? Can you see if anyone's raising their hand?
No hands raised,
No.
Chair.
Okay. Well, last call. Hearing none, why don't we move on? Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the October minutes? This is the October 26th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
So moved. This is Michael.
Okay. I will second it because I'm not sure Carolina's going to be able to talk to us too much. And actually, without her, we can't approve these, can we?
Can you hear me all right?
Now we can.
Okay.
Oh, good. All right. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 22nd, 26th. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes unanimously approved. So first on our business list here is a proposed pilot project to reduce smoke and hazardous burning in homeless encampments. And we have Keely, Ty Gundel, and Jeff Johnston from Orca here to tell us about this program. Who wants, Keely, do you want to kick it off?
I'll kick it off. Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Cox. So Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services here, mostly just giving you a warm handoff to this presentation by Ty Gundel from Olympian Mutual Aid Partners, or OLIMAP, and Jeff Johnston from Orca. So that's the Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency. I got it. And they have been working together on this issue, and this is their presentation. So I will turn it over to them.
Thank you.
Do you folks need any help with the slideshow?
Maybe. I'm trying to share from my screen right now, and I'm not sure how it's showing up on your end.
It looks a little weird.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not showing up well, unfortunately.
Yes, I think I may need you to pull it up, Keely. It's not too nice, it's easy to walk through.
Well, in the meantime, welcome to Jeff and Ty. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Keely. So while Keely gets that pulled up, you can just start from that first slide there. But as already introduced, my name is Ty Gundel. I'm one of the co-directors of Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, and also joining me for this presentation tonight is Jeff Johnston, who's the executive director of the Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency, otherwise known as Orca. And as Keely mentioned, we're here this afternoon to talk with you all about a pilot project that OLIMAP put together and that we've been working closely with Orca to get off of the ground related to addressing hazardous burning and smoke in camp communities, and really to ask for the RHC's support in assisting us in getting this pilot launched. Before beginning to just want to say thank you all for making the time to hear from us today. I know you all are working through a lot of other things, so we just really greatly appreciate the so to start, what is the pilot that we're proposing? Keely, if you can go to the next slide. So what we are proposing is a minimum 6-month pilot project with the specific and targeted goal of identifying, mitigating, and reducing challenges associated with hazardous burning and smoke at specific camps in Thurston County. The camps that could potentially be supported under this could include camps like the Jungle, Percival Creek, Nickerson, Sherwood, Forest, and Lacey. But short of being able to provide support for all of these sites, OLIMAP would recommend focusing on the Jungle and Percival Creek. And we'll get a little bit more into the details of what exactly the pilot would include, but we wanted to start with sharing a little bit more about the background of what led us to this proposal and the needs, issues, and also some of the promising work that we've already been starting together. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and Keely, you can take us to the next slide.
Great. Well, thank you, Ty, and thank you all for the invitation to be with you this afternoon, spend a few minutes talking about this project. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context of why Orca is involved in this and why is this proposal something that Orca supports. Well, as I think most of you know, so Orca, the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, is the local government agency charged with enforcing federal, state, and local air quality regulations in Thurston County. And that includes regulating outdoor burning and the complaints that outdoor burning often generates. Orca is a very small agency. We have 16 people serving a jurisdiction of 6 counties and over 8,000 square miles. So partnerships are critical to our success. So in addition to Thurston County, our jurisdiction includes Mason, Jefferson, Clallam, Grays Harbor, and Pacific counties. Orca's primary method of ensuring compliance with the clean air regulations is through education and outreach. We want to make sure that people know the rules, again, whether it's the businesses, the homeowners, or the the contractors dealing with asbestos. Education outreach is our most effective tool. And we do have civil enforcement authority in instances when education and outreach don't work, but we try not to go there unless we have to. So Orca has been struggling on how best to respond to complaints related to outdoor burning associated with camps of unhoused folks for many years. I stepped into my role on February 1st of this year, and within a couple weeks of starting my new job, was dealing with complaints related to outdoor burning by some of the unhoused folks in Thurston County. And it was immediately became clear that Orca's traditional tools for dealing with these complaints were inadequate or are inadequate. What seemed to me is that rather than Orca staff doing the outreach, the education outreach to the county's unhoused population, why not work with the organizations who are already serving these communities, the folks who are already out there that have relationships with these folks. And so when we get complaints related to, say, burning in the jungle or Percival Creek, why not call on the organizations who are already in these communities? So Ty and I connected earlier this spring, just started brainstorming about our mutual interests and how our organizations could work together to help address some of these issues. And the proposal that you see in front of you today is, at least in part, sort of from some of those brainstorming sessions. So Orca and OLIMAP have been collaborating in a number of ways over the past few months. And last month, Ty and I brought our teams together to get acquainted and talk more about how we could work together in different ways going forward. So it just before turning it back over to Ty, let me just say that Orca is very interested in seeing this OLIMAP proposal move forward and get funded by the Housing Council to help provide OLIMAP with the capacity to continue working with Orca and others in dealing with these complicated issues associated with the homeless camps. So thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ty.
Thank you, Jeff. And thanks, Keely, for bringing us to the next slide. So before being able to move into addressing challenges that are associated with hazardous burning and smoke at camps, I think it's really important to understand why we see unsheltered folks using fires and why they're burning. So it's pretty commonly known that hazardous burning is an issue that impacts really every camp in our area, though there are definitely some camps that have more concerns and escalating concerns than others, and including camps like the Jungle and Percival Creek. And OLIMAP has had a lot of experience with working with camps in the area around issues like these. And what ourselves and other outreach agencies have consistently seen is that the use of burning and fires within camps is more often than not always associated with acts of survival. So things like warming oneself or others, drying soaked belongings, warming or heating food and water, etc. The bottom line is that, heat really is a basic human need and is critical for survival, especially when people are living outdoors. And really, no matter how dangerous a source of heating may be, when a person is choosing between using that and risking serious bodily harm, they're more often than not going to choose to use the heat. So in addition to heating for warmth and cooking, we also often see folks using burning for lighting, which is also tied closely to safety. And of course, also for ridding camps of accumulated garbage or using garbage for warming fires, which are of course some of the more serious and hazardous uses of fires in camps. So Keely, take us to the next slide. So also understanding some of the barriers that contribute to folks using these kinds of practices is important. And of course, I think we wouldn't really be needing to grapple with this issue at this level if we didn't have a shortage of appropriate housing and shelter options. Simply if folks had access to housing or shelter, they wouldn't be needing to burn for safety or survival. But aside from that, other very common sources that contribute to this is lack of access to safer warming and heating supplies, methods, tools, and also inadequate access to garbage removal support. And then lastly, we see usually some periodic like escalations in fire concerns at camps when that's tied to a camp destabilization, which can be caused by many things, but most often it's tied to things like reductions in support, such as outreach support, weather-related emergencies, internal crises or conflicts within camps, and then also, of course, like sharp increases in camp populations, which are usually the result of displacements that have taken place in like the recent past. Next slide. So setting aside the reasons for using these burning practices or why people can't use safer alternatives, the reality is that the practices that are used at a lot of camps in the area are usually very risky and also carry with them some like serious harms, both for the folks living at the camps and also the surrounding neighborhoods and broader community. So some of the main concerns and impacts we see, out of control fires, which of course also carry the risk of injuries, death, property damage, hazardous smoke impacting the health of residents and neighbors. This is one that's really relevant to the jungle. Smoke from the jungle has been impacting employees and neighboring businesses for quite some time. And also, of course, escalating impacts and concerns at camps can lead to other problematic responses, such as displacement, which can really escalate a lot of existing concerns too. Next slide. So yeah, recognizing all of these things, as Jeff mentioned, we started working more closely between our two agencies back in the spring. And really since we've been working together, we've already been doing what we can to increase communication and collaboration between our organizations and try some more hopefully effective responses to the challenges. And as Jeff said, it's really been going great so far working together, and really the main issue has just been a lack of capacity and resources to help take the work that we're doing together to a more like effective level and more organized level. And the proposal that we're talking about today really is an outcome of that work. And on this slide, you see just a recap of the mission. So again, just really targeted and focused on reducing and mitigating challenges related to hazardous burning and smoke at camps. And again, we would recommend if this pilot moves forward to start with the jungle and Percival Creek, which would mean serving roughly between 100 to 130 people. Next slide. So the services we're proposing to provide through this pilot would be outreach, regularly scheduled outreach to the camps that are served in the pilot project. And through that outreach, we would also be distributing supplies specifically to go towards the attention of supporting the use of safer alternatives. So, so things like camp stoves, tents so that people aren't using open fires, things like that, blankets for folks to stay warm, some basic supplies that also decrease the risk of unsafe burning. This would also include preventative supplies, so things like fire extinguishers to help prevent out of control fires in the case that they do happen. And also during this outreach, of course, our workers would be using that time for communication, information sharing, and problem solving with the residents related to concerns that are being shared with us from ORCA, and trying to do some problem solving around that. And also our workers would potentially be able to assist with increased access to garbage services. So facilitating additional dumpsters and working with residents to develop more like ongoing and sustainable garbage management practices, and also providing more garbage removal supplies. And then last thing, we've talked a lot about in our time talking together about what it would look like to just increase education about safer practices and also awareness about the existing laws and restrictions by both like distributing educational materials through outreach and also by potentially facilitating like on-site learning opportunities. So maybe a collaboration with local fire departments to come and talk with folks about what it looks like to do this a lot more safely. Next slide, please. So why this approach? As mentioned earlier, this would likely not be something that we would be needing to talk about if housing or shelter options were available for the people that are surviving in these spaces. Unfortunately, that's just not where we are right now. And there also aren't currently options on the table for providing housing or shelter to these folks in the near future. But in the absence of housing, what we absolutely can do is harm reduction. And as serious as many of like these concerns and their impacts are, there really are some very practical and realistic steps that we can take together to reduce the harms and the impacts that we're seeing with this issue. This proposed approach is also really unique, I think, because it has such a specific goal and specific strategies that are really meant targeted to addressing that. And of course, also, as Jeff talked about, I think the partnership in this is just really something to be proud of and is promising. It's really our hope to bring agencies together that from various disciplines and perspectives to work together on addressing this common issue, which I think is always something our community could use more of. And last, if this pilot were successful, it's a model that I think would be fairly easy to expand, build upon, et cetera. So next slide. As for why now, I think it's really one, because as a community, we're really ready to try something like this. We have enough collective experience, I think, to know what hasn't been working, and also, even more importantly, to have a better idea of what could work better. And really, to point out, none of what we're proposing is completely new. All of the strategies that we're proposing in this pilot are things that have been tried before and that we've seen work and have positive results on a smaller scale. But also, I think, even more than that, it's also kind of thinking about what happens if we don't try something different right now. And as I mentioned before, community impacts and also burnout related to, camps in general, but definitely around hazardous burning is already high and already escalating. And also there's really just a high risk of the issues and conditions at these sites worsening in the near future. And, some of the reasons for that, one, us from an outreach perspective are already seeing a lot of the populations of these camps rapidly increasing because of some of the displacements that have taken place recently. Also right now in our community, we have just on a broad level, much less outreach capacity and outreach resources than we did even this time last year. And we're seeing, decreasing support for garbage removal at camps. And of course, winter is already here. There was quite the frost on the ground, this morning. It's already really cold, really wet. And so a lot of us in the outreach community and involved in homeless response are really expecting, that this could be a very hard winter and a really hard time if other measures aren't taken to help mitigate that. So wrapping up, next slide. What do we need to make this happen? So for OLIMAP to get this off of the ground and to start something with this pilot, we would need a minimum of 2 outreach workers funded for between 45 to 60 hours per week total. We would also be looking for a supplies and services budget of about $3,000 per month, which ranges from between $18 to $22 per person, depending on the number of people served. And could be as high as 30 if 30 per person if the population stays where it's at right now. But like I said, we are seeing a pretty rapid increase in the populations of some of these camps right now. So including some minor admin cost, really the monthly total cost for this program would be between $10,000 to $12,000 per month, or between $62,000 and $74,000 for 6 months, depending on the amount of staffing hours funded through the pilot. And I wanted to let Jeff wrap up to speak to this a little bit more, but as mentioned, the org is interested in contributing towards the cost of this and helping to get this off of the ground. Definitely more support is needed to make that happen. So our shared hope is really, one, that potentially the RHC could use some emergency funding to potentially help with getting this off the ground, and also just the general support and assisting us and bringing others to the table who may also be able to help us move this forward. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Jeff, if there's anything else you wanted to add or wrap up with.
Okay, well, thank you, Ty. I'll just say that so Orca is very much in support of this. In terms of exactly what Orca's contribution to this would be, I'm not exactly sure yet. Again, I want to talk more with Ty to figure out, well, what's the need, whether it's contributing to some of the supplies, contributing to staffing costs. Again, I'm not sure what the Regional Housing Council is going to be able to do, but again, Orca is at the table with you all to figure out how do we move this forward, because as we've talked about, I think this is very much with the outdoor burning component, it's very much in Orca's interest to work with you all to try to address this. And so looking forward to more conversations with Ty and with the rest of you on this. So I think I'll stop there and we can take questions.
Anybody have questions for Ty or Jeff?
Yeah, Councilmember Madrone.
Thank you, Rick and Carolyn. Thank you so much. We do hear a lot from constituents around issues around smoke and fire, and a lot of fear around that too, especially since we've seen a lot of smoke and fire out in the woods that has impacted all of us recently. And there's a lot of fear around impacts to neighboring areas. I'm curious, like up to this point, what has engagement with fire departments looked like?
Yeah, Orca might have more to add from that perspective. For us, the most we've seen, or like the closest we've worked with the fire departments on this is really with the Nickerson camp. So there's been a few times throughout our work with the Nickerson camp where we've reached out with the fire department and worked with them to do outreach to the camp to talk with people about what safer practices would look like, and also to like identify things that are problematic or are already causing issues at the camp. So that's definitely kind of where that work has started and where we would like to see that expand more to other camps. Also, I know just from my own experience that the fire department has been in close communication and has been involved in this work with Orca in the past when concerns about fires and smoke has come up. But Jeff, anything else you wanted to add to that?
I'll just add that Orca does have regular communications with fire officials in Thurston County, so on this issue as well as others. So I have had conversations with Kevin Bossard from the Olympia Fire Department on this issue. Had done some coordination with him, but again, this is an issue that we do regularly talk to fire officials about. But
Could I get just a little bit more clarity on this specific proposal? Like, are the fire departments aware that the RHC is talking about it right now? Like, what do they know about how this work is moving forward and how they've engaged?
Thank you, Danny. Yeah, that helps. Yeah, so they haven't been involved in like the development of this, though. One of the things we've been, like Jeff and I both talked about and we've been very clear about from our end is that, if this were to move forward before, really launching it, what the first thing we'd be wanting to do is do that outreach to make sure that what we're talking with folks about and also like involving them in like the creation of materials and coming up with a plan and making sure that the plan that we have in place is something that aligns with what they would like to see and matches up with the concerns they're experiencing too. So limited so far, but definitely one of the main things we would want to do if this move forward.
Great, thanks. And just a final thought on that specific topic is that I just see like a lot of overlapping scope here going on, and I would just hate for us to move forward and then have the fire departments come at us and say, hey, what is going on? So that's why I ask these questions, is because, I was just talking to some the other day about them having to go down into Percival and like their experiences down there. And I just want to make sure that they feel like they're part of this. So thank you.
Romero.
Thank you. And I think I believe Jeff clearly explained the objective of this particular pilot project. What I'm struggling is if this project is going to meet the intended objectives that Jeff outlined. And it seems to me that there's a lot of outreach, which is that's the first alternative they do, education, outreach. There's a lot of emphasis on this project, at least from your presentation, Ty, that is yet more outreach, more education. And you have highlighted $3,000 for materials, which is equates to, you stated, $18 per person. What are we going to purchase with those that in fact addresses the main objective that Jeff wants to achieve, reducing pollution to a great extent? So I'm a little bit off on this because I don't know if this project really meets the intent of the objectives that Jeff outlined. Thank you.
Yeah, so can speak to that a little bit too. So specifically for the supplies that would be provided, it would be the things that we've seen that, like, when we can provide them for folks that are living at camps, it means that they're not using practices that are more dangerous. So for example, using open fires or burning garbage for warmth. That's one of the main issues that, you know, overlaps between our work and Orca's, is that we see people burning garbage because they don't have anything else to use for heating or for warmth. And so doing supplies like blankets and warm weather materials, even hand warmers, tents, sleeping bags, those kinds of things, when they're provided, can reduce the amount that people are burning, or even the chance they're going to. Being able to make sure that there's connection to food, potable water. A lot of the budget is built off of what we already do at the Nickerson camp, in partnership with some local churches and other organizations to fund, to basically make sure that every resident there has all of the tools that they need to stay warm and cook in as safe a way as possible, and in a way that's not then leading to the concerns that Orca then hears about, right? And what we've really seen, and also one of the reasons why it's reoccurring, is because it's definitely more expensive in the winter months. And one of the most effective things that we've seen work from OLIMAP's perspective is being able to provide safer fuel resources. So for example, getting somebody connected with camp stoves and adapter hoses that can use things besides open flames for heating. And that's obviously something that folks struggle to keep up with because it's a cost. So what we do with a local church that we partnered with is, during the winter months, every single week, we make sure that the folks at the Nickerson camp have enough alternative fuel resources to use that are safer, and so that they can use those tools instead and not use open flames that are more at risk of causing or burn garbage, which is what causes most of the concerns. Also, like I said, people get rid of one of the other main reasons people burn garbage, which leads to the concerns that Jeff is talking about, is just to get rid of it because they don't have access to enough other ways of getting rid of garbage. And so what we've also seen is when we can put resources towards garbage removal, doing more community cleanups, making sure everybody constantly has bags and cleanup tools for that, people are then not burning garbage as often, which again is something that we've seen both at the Nickerson camp, but a lot of other camps as well that got that support. So I think it really, definitely the strategies we selected for this were picked because based off of our experience, there are things that have been done to reduce fire and hazardous smoke at camps already, just on a much smaller scale, because the resources aren't there to do it at the level that I think would be, we will receive even stronger outcomes. So that's really what this would be. And I think we would see a reduction in those kinds of complaints because of that.
So maybe a question for Jeff, is that how you will measure success of this pilot project, Jeff? The reduction of complaints, or how you measure success of this pilot project?
That's a great question, and I have thought about that. In fact, so yes, I would think, I mean, as just an immediate response, I would say yes. If we're getting fewer complaints, then that's a measure. But we could also look at, well, how much contact time, how much interaction, how much education outreach are we able to do in these communities? And then, but yeah, then that would hopefully translate to fewer complaints. But of course, there's lots of variables in terms of complaints. But I think that would be one way to measure success.
Okay. Looks like Keely had her hand up. Were you done?
Yes, me.
All right. So Keely, then Michael.
Great. So just also some context around outreach in general. Once COVID, in this 5-year plan, let me back up. there was a specific strategy to identify more funds for outreach, as it was the first objective from the state's point of view was to identify and engage with all people living outside. So that was an objective, which we didn't have the funds for outreach. When COVID hit, we had the original infusion of funds from the state. And then we had the Emergency Solutions Grant COVID. And so those funds that were infused into our community, it was $300,000 at least that went to Partners in Prevention Education, who are out doing the bulk of the outreach during the last several years. The navigation team with Interfaith Works, and then OLIMAP also received some of those funds for the pilot project, the scattered site. Now that ESGCV is gone, there aren't any funds to replace that. And so PIPE has reduced their outreach from every camp all week long down to 2 camps. And Interfaith Works is no longer doing outreach. They're only doing inreach. And of course, OLIMAP's scattered site severely reduced its ability to go out into encampments. So just some more context around like how little outreach actually is happening compared to 2020 through half of 2022.
Keely, during the Housing Action Team meeting this morning, you made an observation about Lewis County has just made it illegal to camp in public places. And I think you said Pierce County is doing
Correct.
something similar. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think 2 weeks ago, Lewis County did enact an ordinance that would make it illegal to camp on public property. At the same time, Kent and Pierce County in the last month or so have also enacted anti-camping ordinances, which are new ordinances. So we, along with the right-of-way initiative happening at the state level, we have our neighboring counties enacting ordinances that will most likely be pushing people around. And we're kind of at the nexus of those 2 communities. So something else to keep in mind.
Okay, thanks. Michael?
I guess I had a similar question that Ramiro had raised earlier. So it sounds like, and just this is just sort of my understanding of what you said, Ty. So please correct me if this is not correct. But in terms of, I totally get removing the garbage and also the outreach. Those make a lot of sense to me in terms of trying to reduce the incidents which these occur. But it sounds like in terms of the supplies that are being provided to people, the pilot doesn't propose supplying fuel, which would then be burned and still pollute the air. It's talking about supplying alternatives to utilizing a fossil fuel source to provide heat. So like sleeping bags, hand warmers, things like that. Is that correct? Because I heard you also mention something about hoses. And the other thing we hear a lot about that people are in the community are frankly really scared of is the 25-pound propane tanks that fall into the fire and explode. Which whenever that happens, which I think is probably more rare than people think, tends to make, the front page of everyone's Facebook page and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think one thing to say, I think everybody knows this, whether we live in a house or not, but that unfortunately there's no like perfectly safe way for folks to stay safe and warm. Like every method is going to carry with it some level of risk, and just what we've seen is that some carry higher risks than others. But yeah, what you said is mostly correct. I think if I understood right, other than about what we would think is about how we planned it would be about half of the monthly resources would be going, or supply budget would be going towards alternative fuel sources. So again, that doesn't just need to be things like propane. That's one of the things we really wanted to work in partnership with the fire department on, is, does that make more sense, or does it make more sense to be, we've talked with Orca about doing like a shared like community firewood collection or bundle, being able to get that kind of stuff out, in addition, like in partnership with education from the fire departments about how to use how to do like safe, not open flame fires, or like build things where you can burn wood safely. So looking at safer fuel sources is one part of it, but yeah, the other part of the supplies and services would be the non-fuel related resources. So things like blankets, tents, sleeping bags, gloves, clothing, that kind of stuff. And what I would say too is, like, I think this is, most outreach agencies would say the same, is that really when it comes to supplies and services, like anything helps, really. It's just that what we've seen is the more resources we're putting out there, the more likely we are that we're going to see it make an impact and actually, change the stability or safety at a camp. So we see a pretty direct correlation with that. I would say that, like, that's probably the part of the budget that's the most negotiable, but that's just based on, like, what we have seen, and what types of supplies we have seen make a difference in the safety of burning and fires at camps.
I definitely think that we need to have a conversation with our fire departments. I mean, I'm not an expert on what's the safest thing. And, I do think it's also worth noting that in Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater, it's illegal to have cooking fires outdoors. It's also illegal to have a recreational wood fire outdoor. And that might be the most routinely violated law in our cities. Every time Home Depot sells a pellet smoker, you're not allowed to use those here. And we do it constantly. Like this is also like a pretty complex issue just from an enforcement standard for people who aren't living outside too. And these things happen all the time. Like, I know 6 houses in my neighborhood that have fire pits outside that burn wood regularly. And, that has a little grate over it, some of them. So maybe that keeps the sparks down, but it doesn't, smoke doesn't care about a grate. So the nuisance problem is still there. So I think it's important we kind of keep this in the context of, not just people who are living outside to deal with these issues. And, this thing affects all of us. I also want to make sure, Councilmember Kathy, I believe you're a member of ORCA. So I also want to leave some space for you if you have some comments to make as well.
Thank you, Michael. I'll just make a comment on the last thing that you said. We at ORCA, and I'm sure in these other conversations, have been very aware of the rule of not having fires in the city limits, Tumwater, and others, and which has also prompted ORCA to have more in-depth conversations with each of the fire districts, like the fire chiefs or assistant chiefs in all the cities, and or city managers. And so the whole idea of fires, whether it's in someone's backyard, we're working on a rulemaking there to change that. There's some history behind that particular rule or law or whatever you want to call it that has needed attention and to look at. So ORCA has been in conversation with all the cities about that. And I think so the timing is going to cause us to look and see, we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about recreational fires in the grates on your block in the city. And we're talking about people who are having fires for other reasons. And some of the police, I don't know about the police, but some of the fire folks have asked some really good questions and concerns about, the outdoor fires in the camps. So those questions, I just don't want it to get confused with the recreational burning. That is a different issue that ORCA has been working on, but it has made us have a greater contact and understand where city fire officials are coming from on both of these things. So that hasn't been lost at all. It's been very helpful.
So maybe I could jump in here just to add to talk a little bit about some of these issues. So Michael, I completely agree with you that more discussion is needed in terms of what are the appropriate supplies to provide. Is it, I've got some concerns around propane, and I think Ty mentioned the idea of ORCA providing firewood, but with the current ban on recreational fires, that's really not something we can do. We are working, as Joan mentioned, and a lot of you have probably already heard, so ORCA is working on changing that rule. In fact, we talked about it this morning at ORCA board meeting, got approval to move forward, file the appropriate paperwork with the code revisor. So we'll likely be having a public hearing on that in January or February. And then that rule change, the ban on recreational fires in within the city limits of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater would be gone sometime this spring, or spring of 2023, most likely. And one of the reasons, I mean, frankly, how we got into that was through burning in homeless camps. And again, some of the messaging that we were, yes, I mentioned with one of the first places that I got involved with this issue was around the Department of Ecology and working with Lacey PD and Department of Enterprise Services who manage the land there. And so working to get brochures and messaging out to those communities about burning safe. But again, Orca's in kind of an odd place because we're saying how to burn safe, but any outdoor fire is against Orca regulations. And so we're trying to rectify that and kind of streamline it. And again, it's a historical reason about why Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater have this regulation, but it's really the only cities in Western Washington that have this regulation. And so again, we want to get rid of it, as you mentioned, Michael. So few people actually know about it. But again, that's kind of a separate issue, but it's related, and it makes dealing with this all the more complex because of the layers of regulation. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jeff. Danny, is your hand intentionally up still? Or?
Yes, yeah, it's up again. What I'd like to know from Ty and Jeff is like, what is it that you need from us like right now? What is the specific ask of the RHC? And I mean, temperatures are freezing tonight. Like, what is your timeline, your hopes for that? This seems like it's a natural progression from like having reduced scattered sites outreach going on, and an additional good way of like connecting with people in the absence of those services. So what is it? What is the ask of us? And then Tom, a question for you. Didn't we spend all of our emergency funds? Like, do we have anything that is available to go to a program like this?
Why don't we start with Tom and let Jeff and Ty have a chance to gather their thoughts.
Yeah, good question. So yes, you do have emergency funds available. Those reset on September 1st. So you spent last year's emergency fund. So you have a new round. You set aside $200,000 for an emergency. And so you have access to those funds. Those funds would last through August 31st of 2023.
Well, I personally am kind of excited about this, and I really appreciate the work that Ty and Jeff have done to date on this. I see it as a public health issue because it not only affects the encampments, it affects the whole neighborhoods and community around it. I can remember when I was on the Intercity Transit Authority board, staff there were having real respiratory issues because of burning that was going on in the jungle. And if it's affecting people that far away, imagine what it's doing to people in the jungle. So, you know, I'm interested in seeing if we can't pursue this, but let's let Jeff and Ty bring it home with their thoughts on the question that just got raised here.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as what we would be asking from the RHC, I mean, it's hard to exact numbers, like Jeff said, you know, there is interest in Orca potentially in contributing too, so they may be able to support with that. But really, I mean, I think we are interested and would love to see the RHC support this with funding. Again, our need to get it off of the ground is going to be between 62 and 74,000, depending on the staff hours that are covered, and also how much, you know, we end up putting towards that monthly supply budget and what the interest is there. So we definitely didn't come to this meeting anticipating that we would hear exactly, you know, whether or not the RHC did want to go ahead and support this and how much. You know, we know this is an introductory conversation for many folks, but I think we would, you know, definitely love to leave this meeting knowing whether it's something the RHC is interested in exploring further and coming away with some next steps about, you know, what Jeff and I could bring back to you all, what information is still needed for us to get this off the ground. And like Danny, you mentioned winter. Yeah, it's already here. So really, definitely the need for it, for this going is, really as soon as possible. We are, we're going, OliMap is going through some, hiring and onboarding over the next couple of months. So I would say if it was possible for something to be more expedited, especially in response to more of like an emergency need, we would be able to like have this, going at the latest by January 1st, depending on when things were started. So, I mean, I think it really is, for us, it would be as soon as you can, but also, as we've talked about there's pieces of this proposal that, we would want to be able to talk more with the fire departments about, more with ORCA about, to make sure, some of these strategies may have to wait until rule changes come or until some of those things are in place. But there are definitely aspects of this and a lot of it that we could do as soon as we had the funding for it. So yeah, hopefully that answers. Jeff, I don't know if you want to add any other thoughts to that.
No, I would just echo what you said, Ty, that I mean, in some ways, this proposal is kind of fairly high level. I mean, the conversations that Ty and I've had have been fairly high level. Knowing, and this presentation, this invitation to meet with you today came together end of last week. And so I think if we get signal from you all that that you are interested in looking at funding this going forward, then Ty and I would work, and probably with others to, okay, what are the key questions? What are the areas that we need to tighten it down? And again, as we've talked about, work with local fire officials, make sure that they're on board, and figure out what is, because there's a lot in here, and what are the key things that are gonna enable us to move forward, maybe get in place the soonest, to address the issues that we know are there. So stop there.
All righty. Carolina had a question, and then we really need to wrap this up. I will come back to trying to get a consensus of where the group is on it, but Carolina, go ahead.
Thank you. And not really a question, more of a comment, Carolyn. And I also serve on the ORCA board. And, once Jeff had conversations with Ty, he kind of looped me in, as I serve both on ORCA and the RHC. And we've had multiple conversations about this. And, I wanted to have them here today just because I thought it would be best relayed by both Jeff and Ty on what this program is. I do think it's a valuable asset to have, especially if we want to get other partners along the way, like our fire chiefs involved. I think they would want to see something like up and running, and something that they can actually see is working. But kind of echo, I guess, what Carolyn said. I think it would be a great thing to see if it would work, and if we have the funds available, I think it's something that we should support.
All righty. Let me check in with Michael and Danny. I'm thinking we're not going to have a second November meeting, and we'll only have one meeting in December as well. So would you all want to perhaps have tech team work with Jeff and Ty and have them all come back next month and make a decision at that point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would like that to involve some outreach to our public safety officers in our respective fire departments as well, to sort of make sure that they're in the loop and aware of what we're talking about.
Sounds good. Don't forget about Fire District 3 too, Lacey. Okay. So Tom, can you make that happen? Pull it together?
Yep, we will make sure that happens and have it on the December agenda.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ty and Jeff, so much. That was great information, and I'm sorry we have to wrap that piece up, but we'll look forward to having you back. Our December meeting, I believe, is on the 14th of December. You get that right? Rick's nodding. Okay. So we'll see you then, I hope.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
great. Well, yes, thank you for the time this afternoon and for
Thank you.
considering this proposal.
Well, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thanks all and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you all for bringing it. It does my heart good. Alrighty, moving on to our governance update. We have Keely, Jacinda, and did Darian make it on to the call too? No, okay.
No, Darian's not here today.
Okay, so we got Keely and Jacinda.
Great. So just an update on where we are at with regards to the advisory boards. And try to be brief. And I'll let Jacinda, if you like this morning, if you want to take the affordable housing specific stuff. And I'll just talk about the homeless services and then just generally what we're up to. So we are we've been meeting, Darian, myself, and Jacinda weekly over the last couple weeks to just begin in earnest, making sure that we can get these advisory boards stood up in time for our RFP review process in the spring. Jacinda has put together an excellent timeline projected to have us bringing applications live, having applications go live on the first week of January. So at this point, we have drafts of applications for both advisory boards that we're working on, and we want to make sure that they're all tied up with a bow and in good shape to be released for general consumption in the first week of January. We are currently developing review criteria based on the charter, and then just individually per advisory board, what are some criteria we'd want to look at in order to decrease barriers for those who would like to participate and to ensure that we have a diverse spread of individuals that would be serving on these advisory boards. And then we will also we're also having development rules of engagement, grievance procedures. If for some very rare and hopefully never reason there is an advisory board that board member that may need to no longer participate on the advisory board for not engaging as per the rules of engagement. So we're looking at that. We are also looking at onboarding and training materials for both advisory boards. And so trying to get those all in alignment as well. We intend to come before you on the 14th of December with as much of that in one package to show you all of the materials that we've created and get your approval on moving forward with recruiting in January. Jacinda, sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. Jacinda, do you want to take over for the affordable housing?
So I will add, I think a lot of you or some of you were on HAT this morning. Keely and I shared information about the boards to HAT this morning. And I also spoke, Keely and I and Darian spoke with the affordable housing team, a subgroup of HAT yesterday, I guess. So trying to, make sure our HAT membership is kind of up to date and keeping track of everything that's going on at Regional Housing Council and the many moving pieces and establishing kind of where everyone fits. And I think Keely touched on most of the things we are working on, so we will definitely have quite a bit to bring forward next month to you all. I don't think I have anything specific other than that to Affordable Housing Board that we didn't discuss, I think, last meeting.
All righty. Well, just like that, we're back on schedule. Thank you for your brevity and good detail. And then Tom is next with a process overview for our request for funding proposals.
Yep, thank you, Chair Cox. And so I'm going to share my screen. And just to start the conversation, so hopefully folks can see this. Just want to start the conversation as we get into RFP season. We've put together a list of key dates for the RFP. So just want to start getting you thinking about these upcoming dates. So we've reached out to the Housing Action Team and asked them for their recommendations. Since the advisory boards won't be stood up, we're looking, as we have done the last many years, to ask the Housing Action Team to provide their recommendations for priorities for the homeless services and affordable housing. So that will be in early January. We'll present those to you at the January meeting, and then hoping at the January 25th meeting, coming to you to approve the funding priorities, the scoring criteria, the set-asides, and the funding levels. So that's all going to be happening in January, and then looking to issue that request for proposals at the end of February. Having a bidders conference, those applications will be due at the end of March. And then by April, we hope our advisory boards will be stood up and that those advisory boards will be on board to review and score those applications, and then presenting those recommendations from the advisory boards to you at the end of April, with the hope of taking those to the Board of County Commissioners for votes on May 9th. That is a little bit faster for those of you who have been through this process before. That's a little bit of an accelerated process at the end to get those recommendations approved and in front of the county commissioners. That is because for the federal funds, we are in the middle of working on our 5-year consolidated plan. That plan is due July 15th, requires a 30-day public comment period. We usually have an annual action plan that has a similar public comment period. Because the con plan is a little more complicated, it's a little bigger document, a little more complicated. We don't want to kind of do that public hearing process right up until July 14th, the day before it's submitted. We need a little bit more time. So we are accelerating that review process a little bit in April into May to allow us to complete that consolidated plan for the Federal Home Investment Partnership and Community Development Block Grant program funding. So that's a high level overview of the timing. So keep those dates in mind. And then the other thing I just wanted to start your thinking about is going over our revenues for next year. So in your packet is a table that reflects what we awarded in 2022. Come January, we'll fill out these tables with what we think we'll have to award in 2023. But I wanted to kind of include a couple notes. Specifically, several of these fund sources, including our 2060 and 2163, are local document recording fees. And our CHC consolidated homeless grants are also based on those same document recording fees. We are seeing a substantial decrease in document recording fees from previous years, especially kind of in 20 and 21, when interest rates were incredibly low and lots of people were refinancing. With rising interest rates, folks, I would say virtually no one is refinancing their mortgages these days, with 7% interest rates, and home sales are slowing down. As a result, we're seeing a 35 to 45% decrease in document recording fees over the last few months compared to what we saw last year. And that is going to impact the revenue we have to award in this coming funding cycle. So just want to kind of highlight that. We're also a little unsure about the 1277 is also a document recording fee. So we've reached out to the state. So we will curious to see what we'll receive from the state this year and how we'll be able to allocate those funds. So, and then our local home fund obviously will be a new revenue source as well. So just wanted to kind of lay this out. We also have listed some one-time fund sources, the shelter program grant and right-of-way initiative. So we have those funds. The shelter program grant is coming to an end in June of 2023. We're uncertain if that program is going to be renewed. And then the right-of-way is one-time funding. And then I've listed some of the COVID-specific funding that we received that is largely running out. And so most of these funds, the Emergency Housing Grant, the CARES Act funding, the Emergency Solutions Grant, we've got about 100,000 left that will be spent out pretty much this year. Our Community Development Block Grant, CD, which I know this body does not oversee, but impacts our community, is spent out. And our rent assistance is coming to an end. So we've spent approximately $55 million in rent assistance. And those funds we expect to be fully spent out by early 2023. So really just want to kind of highlight that for you as we start to have those conversations coming into January about what are the resources we have in our community. Oh, one other thing I did want to mention, especially around that home fund, is we'll be asking you for a decision on how much of those home fund dollars you want to allocate for services versus capital. At least 60% needs to go to capital projects, but there is a portion that can be used for services. So we're going to be looking for you to make some decisions about how much of that home fund we will want to allocate for service projects or homeless services. And then I've also listed what we did last year for set-asides, including our coordinated entry, housing basic needs, cold hazardous weather, point in time, the emergency funds, and the homeless coordinator and lived experience advisory board stipends, whether that's something we want to have a set aside for this year. So no decisions for you today, but just wanted to start kind of getting your brain working on some of these funding decisions that we're going to be coming to you in January to ask you about. So with that, I will stop sharing. Happy to answer any immediate questions that folks have, but really just want to introduce the topic to you, as in December and January, we'll be having more in-depth conversations about the RFP.
Anyone have a question? Tom, I know it would just be spitballing at this point, but you were talking about the diminishing recording fees and all. Could you just give us a ballpark estimate, like we're going to be down 25% or whatever it is you think it is in terms of available resources?
Yeah, I would, again, please don't hold me to this, but I would project if we awarded 2.8 million in 2163 this past year, it will be closer to 1.8 to 2 million available this year. So I think we are going to be down in that 30 to 40% range for those fund sources.
All righty. Anybody else have a question for Tom? No? Okay. All righty. Rick and Keely with the right-of-way update.
All right, Keely's going to lead us off.
Thank you. I have to leave a little early tonight, so I skipped the line. So just an update on current active right-of-way initiative activities that are happening right now. So we do have the outreach into the encampments, as well as the funds through Safe Place to provide hoteling for those fleeing violence in the encampments, in the right-of-way encampments, as well as Unity Commons. So those activities are still ongoing. However, there is continued pressure and urgency coming down from the governor's office to Commerce, to the right-of-way in Thurston County, to speed things up as we come towards cold weather. So questions have been asked from our state partners to, what can we do? Can we put people in hotel rooms? Can we buy a block of apartment buildings? A number of questions have come to us. And so our jurisdictional partners and the tech team, actually, thanks to Ty Gundel, who put together some options. They asked us to come up with our own options for ways in which we feel like we could increase support to those in the right of way. We all came to an agreement that really, in lieu of there being another hotel that can be purchased or leased long-term at this time, we don't have viable options to quickly move people inside, hoping to avoid any repeats of hoteling in the past that did not go so well, with it being unprepared or unplanned, and not as well supported as it needed to be. And so we have all come to an agreement that really increasing outreach efforts and shoring up those, increasing the number of outreach individuals that can go into encampments, as well as having the conversation for prolonging the contract that the state has with Safe Place to continue offering hotel rooms to those fleeing violence. We had an excellent meeting on Tuesday where Safe Place Executive Director Matthew Solomon and staff Heather Thompson explained how that effort is going in the encampments, and it was really eye-opening as to the nature of those fleeing violence that are unsheltered and how difficult and tricky it is. And people are catching on that it's an option, and law enforcement are reaching out to Safe Place. Other folks doing outreach are reaching out to Safe Place for the specific program. It's Matthew reported that every month they're turning away 50 to 60 individuals seeking shelter from that are fleeing violence actively. That is a frightening, staggering number, and those are the ones that are that are making their way to safe place. So we did state that if there was an opportunity to lease a hotel long term for a year or more, that we would be interested, and if they could provide the funding for operations, of course, we would support putting that together. But for the time being, we will just continue to operate as we have, and hopefully increase some of the stabilization efforts that have been going on. And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Anyone? Okay, thanks, Keely.
Okay, and the second part of the right-of-way update is, as everybody's aware, part of the work of the right-of-way initiative is that the state commerce has come together with dollars to towards the purchase and renovation of a hotel. We're close to getting the MOU completed and routed for review by the local jurisdictions, the county and the city of Lacey, for the purchase of the hotel by the Low Income Housing Institute, or known as Lehigh. And so as that's moving forward, we're getting ready to do public outreach. And so with the hotel, it's located at 8200 Quinault Drive, and it's currently known as the Days Inn Hotel in Lacey. We are set up to have a public forum, and it's scheduled for Wednesday, November 16th. We're going to hold 2 sessions to this public forum. We're going to have a 3 o'clock start and a 6 o'clock start. We're looking to have these go for 90 minutes. And as we and they'll be held at Lacey City Hall. The program for the forum is we'll have a facilitator, which I'll act as a facilitator, and then we'll have a group of panelists for responding to question and answers. Right now, we have the panelists set up to be Scott Spence from the city of Lacey, Tom Webster and Keely Marino from Thurston County. Currently, it's Nathan Pepin from the Department of Commerce and Josh Castle, from Lehigh. And then, of course, we have all the other staff and tech team that will be there as support for specific Q&A type questions as well. So the kind of the format of this open public forum is, again, we'll as we kick off, we'll do a kind of a welcome and kind of introductions and kind of overview the agenda, and then an overview of the project and why are we talking about this hotel acquisition and what the partnership is. And then we'll actually turn it over to Josh with Lehigh, who will go through a presentation of who Lehigh is, what successes they've had in other locations, what service to be offered at the hotel, the referral process. They'll also go over kind of the code of conduct for review and expected timelines, and then how they generally form community advisory groups and how the community or adjacent properties can be involved in that, and they're also their contact information. And then we'll jump into the Q&A for specific questions from those that are in attendance. And again, like we said, we'll go till Q&A is completed, but we're looking to hold it for a 90-minute duration as a total. One of the pieces of, I want to mention too is how we're engaging or getting advertisement out. Of course, we did some press releases on Tuesday, which I think everybody probably saw that the Olympian picked it up and that press release and got the announcement out in the general circulation. We are also doing postcard distributions, direct mailings to businesses and property owners. We also actually created flyers and did hand delivery to businesses in the immediate adjacent or immediate location around the site, and of course pushing out through social media updates, etc. And also have coordinated that outreach or that notification with Thurston County as well. Let's see, and I believe that's pretty much the quick overview of what that forum will look like and when it is scheduled. So I'll respond to any questions that the RHC may have.
Okay, let's go questions.
Yes, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, can you say again when that's happening?
It is Wednesday, the 16th And we'll have a 3 o'clock session and a 6 o'clock session. And the one thing I forgot to mention is that we will have it in person, but also have webinar format, meaning that it will be broadcast, but it won't be hybrid in the sense that people would not be able to interact if they attend or view the forum through the virtual world
And where's it happening?
at Lacey City Hall in the council chambers.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. I'll make sure to share this information out. Also, everybody, I apologize, but I do have to take off. But good to see you all. I'll see you at the next one. And Scott, best to you.
Thank you, Danny. Well, Rich, was that a hand up?
No, that was just a wave to Danny. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. No problem. I've been asked to be at the community outreach meetings. I can make the 6 o'clock, but not the 3 o'clock. And I think it would be nice to have another RHC member at the afternoon one. So I had suggested maybe they reach out to Carolina. I don't know if you're available or not.
So
But-
Councilmember Cox said I believe that's in process.
Okay. Good. Well, hopefully we'll get coverage, and if she can't, we'll be calling on somebody else here soon.
And I just want to say thanks to our public affairs staff and Assistant City Manager Shannon Kelly Fong for kind of help coordinating this effort, as well as all the staff from Thurston County and Lehigh that participated in our pre-planning meeting. And that's where we talked about trying to get more invites out to folks to be able to attend. So do appreciate everybody's effort to work on this.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. And now, Scott Spence. You've been waiting for this moment, haven't you? So Scott H, what does the H stand for?
Harland is my grandfather's name.
Helen, that's nice. So on behalf of the Regional Housing Council, we've written a letter that you'll be able to take with you. I'm going to read this into the record and then invite everybody on the call, if they'd like to make a comment, they can do so. So here goes. Scott, you have been instrumental in establishing the Regional Housing Council and collaborating with regional partners to find common solutions and approaches to homelessness and the housing crisis. Recognizing the need to coordinate funding with a regional vision and strategy to provide housing, shelter, and support services to the community, you helped guide efforts to transform a 3-city ad hoc committee into the 5-jurisdiction Regional Housing Council in place now. From its infancy, you gave the RHC a home and staff support at Lacey City Hall. You helped navigate a path forward to unify the cities of Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey, Thurston County, and South County cities in adopting the interlocal agreement that formally established the Regional Housing Council. When the going got tough, you never gave up. The Housing Council has been instrumental in aligning regional goals, resources, and coordination for homeless response, shelter, and housing services, and is poised to eventually become an independent agency. The RHC recognizes your role in its formation and your collaboration to achieve a coordinated response to housing and homeless issues. We thank you for your many contributions and wish you great satisfaction and success in your future endeavors. Yours in healthy housing for all, and in signature.
Thank you, Councilmember Cox. Appreciate that.
You bet. So this will be Scott's last meeting with us, I think. So if anybody has any thoughts they'd like to share, I see Ramiro's hand is up. Please do.
And this is the first time we know what the H stands for. Really, Scott?
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, I just want to share The same sentiment that you heard on the letter. And at least from my perspective, you have been an institution of leadership. An institution of leadership at the city of Lacey as well as in the region. And it's nothing but the residents of the city of Lacey as well as the residents of the county have benefited from that incredible leadership you have provided over the decade, if not more. So, and at the personal level, I always appreciated your perspective, your friendship, and soon enough will give me an opportunity to shake your hand and wish you well. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Romero. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ramiro. Any other hands up?
Councilmember Hauser does.
Michael?
Thanks. Well, Scott, I'm sure you'll miss me very much. That's what I always write in cards whenever someone leaves, and it's a goodbye card. So I'm sure you'll miss me very much. I'll just that, Scott, I first got to know you when I was on the JazzCom committee, which I inadvertently may have driven you away from, but then you came back to us and then ended up leaving again, which I can only assume is because of our presence and dedication commitment to those animals. But I want to thank you because I think you have helped make me a better public servant by your way of explaining very complex topics in a very simple fashion. I've sort of modeled some of the ways in which I digest information, sort of based on the ways in which I've sort of been able to view you in your work, explaining these very complex things and how to sort of take things piecemeal and piece by piece and how to digest it in the greater context of public service and the greater context of the goals by which we're all trying to achieve here. So I just want to thank you because I feel like I'm a better public servant as a result of being able to work alongside you in a few different contexts. So you will be sorely missed, and I appreciate you very much and wish you all the best in your next endeavor.
Thank you. Very humbling. Thank you. Appreciate that.
John?
Well, continuing a Tumwater theme, Scott, I first got to know you on JazzCom also. And I've always carried that experience of being with you on that committee in that little room, and your commitment to that committee, but also your love of animals. I watched you love those dogs and those, creatures that we had, and it showed a side of you that I've always kept in my view anytime I've seen you and anytime I've worked with you. We have taken a few walks, but I see the side of you that cares, and who it mixes with what Michael said, strong leadership, honesty, saying sometimes the hard things, being creative. Yeah, I've just appreciated you so much. And the other thing is, I have always felt like you do one of the best jobs of honoring people. And I have felt like you have always honored me and sought my opinions and given me space to grow and be the leader that I am. And I don't know what it is you're off to, but wherever it is and whoever you're going to work with is getting a gem.
Thank you.
So,
appreciate it.
Be well.
I feel like I'm leaving Earth a little bit. This is a little bit too for me. I just.
Well, I guess some of us don't know exactly what you're going to be doing, Scott. You want to fill us in?
Yeah, so I was extended an offer for the city manager position in Astoria, Oregon. So if you have a love for fish and chips or the Goonies, that's a good place to visit. So you stop on by and stop by City Hall and give me a call.
Wow.
Rich, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Hey, Scott, congratulations on the new opportunity at Astoria. That's a really cool town. You're going to do a fabulous job there. And just personally and on behalf of Olympia, thanks for all you've done for our region. You know, we're talking about housing, obviously this evening, but Scott, when you think about everything you've touched, from housing to emergency services, transportation, drinking water, you know, just the parks, just the myriad of things that we do in local government, just the impact that you've had has just been tremendous. Thanks for always being a great partner, good person to work with, and just wish you all the best.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, Carolina.
Thanks. Well, Scott, just wishing you the best of luck. It's been a pleasure to work with you this past year and a half. I know it's felt like longer working with me, but it's okay. But it's just been great getting to know you, and you know, you're going to be missed, and you know, wish you all the best in Astoria. I know you're going to do some great changes over there, so.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that.
Anybody else?
I think we maxed out
Oh,
the.
we got Kelly has her hand up.
All right, Kelly.
Uh-oh. I just want to say thank you, Scott. You believe and promote you believe in and promote your people, and you have created a lot of great leadership opportunities. I remember the days when we were doing this at City Hall and shuffling around like mad at the end of the day trying to get the group together. But I just thank you for trusting me to support this group.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that.
I would just add that I was elected to the Lacey City Council in November 2017. And the morning after the election, my phone rang. I'm not even sure it was quite 9 a.m. And it was Scott Spence calling to congratulate me and making me feel welcome and doing all he could to make joining the council and onboarding with all the city departments a really smooth experience, and supporting me all the way through today. And I just can't thank you enough, Scott. You've been marvelous. And I think you've done Lacey proud.
Thank you.
There'll be more. We'll keep it on.
Well, hey, Mia, because I know I have 3 minutes. I know you want me to use the full agenda. Let me just say, we do need to recognize as a region, we have come a long way. So some may recall back in 2001, our collaboration, the extent of that was we were overflowed to the Salvation Army shelter, and we were rotating, in a sense, shelter space at City of Lacey, Olympia, Thurston County, and Tumwater. And fast forward today, 20 plus years later, we're now trying to set up an independent agency that has a comprehensive approach to try to deal with homelessness, housing, and try to solve a very complex problem, but on a regional basis. So that just sort of tells you how far that we've come in terms of as a region, and how we try to, again, apply compassion, but also try to help the needs of the community. And, I do appreciate the individual platitudes, but I mean, it really does take a team. It takes partnerships and collaboration. So, I mean, although I appreciate the accolades, I really can't do that with people like, again, partners like Romero and Rick and Rich and Kelly and the elected officials that represent all the jurisdictions. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. We're going to miss you a lot.
Thanks.
Righty. Good of the order. Who's got some good? Not seeing any hands. Okay. Well, a reminder that we won't have a second meeting in November, that our one and only meeting in December is on the 14th at 4 o'clock. And like this, it'll be a Zoom meeting. So unless anybody else has anything, we'll move to adjourn. thank you all. And Rick, thank you for your support. So we're trying to navigate from a new location here. And take care, everybody. Bye. Can you leave?